Well, let's talk about being a political activist in America. We're joined now by William He, who's a student at the University of Texas and the founder of Dream for America, a non-profit organisation which aims to educate students to promote liberal values. And we're also joined by Mika Watson, who's a conservative and pop culture commentator in Washington, D.C., who goes by Pop Culture Mika online. Welcome both. Mika, can I first of all ask what your initial thoughts were when you heard about the shooting of Charlie Kirk?
Well, thank you, and good morning or good afternoon where you are. My first initial thoughts were the fact that Charlie Kirk, one, was gone. And I felt an instant saddening because this is America, and we stand for freedom of speech. We stand for public discourse, no matter what side of the aisle that you're on. So I was just saddened by everything that happened.
William, what about you?
Yeah, and thank you for having me on, and good afternoon to your audience. I thought the assassination was deplorable and it was horrifying, and as I disagree with Charlie on almost everything, but it was deeply saddening to watch that happen, and I pray and hope the best for his family and all of his loved ones.
Mika, what is it like being a conservative who is online an awful lot, who is putting their political views out there? Do you get a lot of hate online?
Oh, we definitely get a lot of hate online. And then, especially for someone like me, I get a lot of hate because I am a person of color. So when you are Hispanic, when you are Black, you tend to get it even more so because they already have preconceived biases of what you're supposed to think, what your thoughts supposed to be, what side of the aisle you're supposed to be on. And this only exacerbates the situation because we kind of feel like we're already under attack. And now, if we go out and speak our thoughts and our opinions, will we be attacked as well?
William, is it the same for you?
Yeah, I'm deeply concerned about what's happening in this country and around the world. And as Mika said earlier, right, we are America. We are supposed to be a beacon for the world for freedom and democracy and opportunity. And the fact that this is happening now in this country, and what is supposed to be the greatest country in the world, is very troubling. And I am very concerned about the future of our democracy. I mean, overall, I think political violence writ large is unacceptable in any circumstance and is a cancer on our country. And I think extremism on either side will be our downfall. And if we fail to change course, we are headed for a very dark road ahead of radicalism and extremism and violence.
I wonder, William, you describe yourself as a liberal. You're from a different political persuasion to the Utah Governor Spencer Cox we heard from just a few moments ago. But do you agree with what he was saying?
I think so. I think, at this moment in time, I think both sides need to turn down the temperature a little bit. I think it's not okay for anyone on the left to celebrate and to mock Charlie's death. At the same time, it's not acceptable for anyone on the right to foment fear or to call any Democrat or liberal domestic terrorist and that they should be, hung and sought out in the streets. I think neither kind of discourse is acceptable. I do think, though, you can separate the art from the artist, right? Charlie was a husband, a father, a son. He was loved by friends and family. He is a human, a child of God. At the same time, I think he has made a career and has profited off of division and hate and a lot of inflammatory language. So as much as I disagree with his statements and his views and his beliefs, I can still empathize with the fact that he was a father and he was a son and he was loved by many. So, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I do agree with the governor. And I think that, we have to forgive and we have to find a way to see the human in each other. And I hope one day we can get back to a country where we can be that once again.
Now, Charlie Kirk was not an elected politician. He was primarily an activist, an influencer, like you two. I wonder, Mika, whether you feel safe doing what you were doing.
Well, I definitely feel safe because I already have, those type of protections around me, and I
What do you
never go
mean?
anywhere. Meaning, I have, individuals that are definitely on, the law enforcement side, and I never go anywhere where I don't know, what I'm going to be getting into. So that's one thing. But on the other hand,
Is it
I
worth it
thought
for
about
that? You mean that
it
you're
is.
not living a full free life there, are you?
Well, no, unfortunately, and this was before the issue with Charlie Kirk, the situation that just happened. This was before because kind of goes to um, William's point. Well, the discourse that we've been having, it has on both sides been ratcheted up, but it seems like the left has been saying, well, you cannot say these things because they hurt my feelings, whether or not they're true. And when we start trying to silence truth over the fact that it may cause someone's feelings to be hurt, someone may get upset. We start to get into a dangerous territory because now we're silencing what we could actually fix, what we could actually come to a medium consensus on, all because we want to protect feelings over facts.
William, are you worried? Have you had any experiences where you thought what could have or should have been a civil political debate might turn ugly?
Yeah, and I'll also push back on what Amika said just now. But to answer your question, yeah, I think so. I think we've gone to a. It's not just political violence, but also gun violence as well. I mean, there's also a lot to say that right after Charlie was assassinated, you also had another school shooting at a high school in Colorado right after that. So I think we're dealing with much more than just a political violence problem. I think we're dealing with a cultural and violence problem. And I think I am fearful. Democracy is built on the foundation of free and fair public discourse in the public square, and if not, an attack on Charlie or anybody else for that fact is an attack on all of us. And if we no longer have the ability or feel comfortable expressing our opinions in public or at all, that is a loss for our democracy as a whole. Now, to push back on Mika's point, I think I'm sure there's some part that maybe perhaps folks on my side of the aisle have played on that part, but it's not just a mere kind of feelings are hurt, but I think sometimes right wing commentator, I guess I should say maybe far right commentators would verge into the denial of people's existence, or maybe pushing a couple of too many buttons about trying to vilify certain groups of people. I think when it gets to that point, I think people have a right to be upset and to push back on that.
Well, people do have a right to be upset. People have the right to say what they want to say. But where it comes in on, the other side of the aisle is that, you know, we are also being told that we have to agree with what someone else wants something to be called, what someone else wants something to be named. And we're even being told that we shouldn't see things for what they are. And if you do not, then you're a fascist, then you're racist, then you're a bigot, then you're a sexist. And these things can exacerbate on the ends of, well, if they don't agree, they must be dangerous. And I think that's what got Charlie Kirk and the unfortunate events that happen, because there are people that are taking this to the extreme when you put out rhetoric like that from the left.
I,
William?
I think, yeah, I think what's most important, I think, is we need to get to a place in this country where we can have the urge to not veer towards the most extreme option during our discourse, and have the courage to have nuance and have details and debate um, substance. Because I think too often, right, what is the most flashy thing? What's the most inflammatory thing? Especially pushed by a lot of people in media or our elected officials or and so on. For example, I mean, right after Charlie was shot, one of the first things that you will hear from right wing commentators is that Democrats are behind this, and that we are verging on civil war, and that we should try all Democratic leaders as domestic terrorists. And that's before we knew any semblance of information about the shooter. I mean, this morning we found out that the shooter is a straight white guy from Utah who grew up in a conservative family. And that's I'm not
Right.
pointing any fingers here. I'm just saying that we need to be more disciplined in how we talk about politics, more careful in how we choose our words, and having the courage to be substantive and debate, different issues. And the other thing I'll ask
Right, but
also add is that,
if I can just
yeah,
push back on that last point, again, just like you said, someone from the right side of media, but if you go to the left side of media, right when this happened, MSNBC, there was a reporter there who got fired just moments afterwards because he's already saying Charlie Kirk is divisive. Charlie Kirk is this, and this is why this happened, and this is why this is happening, without knowing anything. This is moments afterwards. So again, it goes to show that there's no empathy. There's nothing there that says, hey, let's take a moment and slow down. This is a human being, and that has been and that has been expressed in academia on these campuses, because a lot of the liberal campuses are pushing these ideas that the right is dangerous because they don't believe what you believe. And if we're going as far as saying that, then there is no space for public discourse. There is no space to even come to the middle, because the other side is saying that they're wrong. Don't listen to them, silence them.
I wonder if you
I'll
both go
yeah.
back through your recent posts, whether there are any that you regret sending, whether there was name calling or demonisation, or whether you think it was a bit too far, maybe crossed the line from civility into something that is a bit unpleasant. Mika?
I would say no, because what I tend to do on my side of the aisle is I go and I look at what's happening in popular culture. And a lot of the times I'm reacting or talking about things that have been said. And then I give my thoughts and opinions on it. But there's never any thoughts and opinions that aren't something I'm able to cite, something I'm able to back up with actual facts. Because a lot of the times we see sound bites, we see people just throwing out figures and numbers, when if you go and actually do the research, it's not at all what the media or even the pundits or even the politician is really saying.
Yeah, facts are disputed in America. Almost everything seems political. William, what about you? Can you be honest and say you've never posted anything where you called a political opponent a name or belittled them or demonised them?
Not to my recollection, no, I don't think so. And I'm also not that kind of person. And I also want to go back to something that Mika said earlier about academia. I think part of the reason why we also can't have debates anymore is actually part of the demonization of academia and the demonization of educators and professors and people who work so hard to educate our children and to foster debate on campus. This kind of anti-intellectualism, I think, is very dangerous to democracy and future discourse. And there's also something to be said about the reaction. I mean, I don't support what that commentator on MSNBC said, but there's also something to be said about the right's reaction after the assassination of Melissa Portman, or the attempted assassination of Paul Pelosi. It was not met with empathy, but either no words or outright humiliation or making fun of their plight.
So you're both saying there's a problem, it's just not
I
my
agree.
side.
Yeah,
I think there is
there's
a
definitely
problem
a
on both sides.
problem. Yeah, I think there's definitely a problem, because even when everybody thought that Donald Trump possibly had passed away, you have people like Tim Walz coming out saying, well, I thought we had good news. All right. And now you see with Charlie Kirk, being shot, people are like, yes, say it's true, say it's true, say it's true. So again, you have those that are supposed to be leaders and people in academia. They're all online, they're all on the media saying that this is fascism. We should, do this to Donald Trump. We should do this to someone. I mean, we can go on and on and on about statements that have been made that were inflammatory, but yet someone like Charlie Kirk is taken as being being demonized for saying certain things that the left has no problem with saying on national TV.
William?
Yep. I think there's a problem with extremism on both sides here. You have
I agree.
a lot of people on the far left, and then you have an ascendant far right wing as well on the right that I think are driving a lot of the division here. And I think at the end of the day here, I think most Americans, regular people who don't, who are not focused on the partisan BS on a daily, I think most people have a lot more common with each other than they have with, say, the political commentators on Twitter or Elon Musk or whoever. And I think most people aren't really thinking about this kind of thing on a daily basis. And I think a lot of people are very tired of this kind of division. I think everyone is hungry for some sort of change. I think at the end of the day, too, if anything, no matter your beliefs, I think we can all agree that violence is bad and that everyone deserves the right to speak freely without the threat of violence, and that regardless of politics, we can agree that something has to change here and that this is not tenable.
Definitely agree with that. And I do, but I will push back and say I do think it needs to come, at least for the left, it needs to come from the pundits on TV or the people that they look up to, because those people tend to be the leaders of a lot of the rhetoric. And if they don't want to tone down the rhetoric because they're getting likes, they're getting seen, then why would any of the fringe groups on either side tone down the rhetoric? And I'm just being honest when I say I do see it more on the left, because most of the mainstream media here in the United States is liberal. So you don't see that many far right wing pundits on television, or even on platforms that are very visible. Most of them are very, subjective. You have to go to YouTube or things like Rumble. You never really see them on mainstream, but you see them on mainstream on the left.
I'm pleased we
And he
got a
reaches.
point of agreement from you both earlier on that something does need to change. We haven't quite nailed what it is that needs to change, so perhaps we'll get you both back on another occasion. William He, Mika Watson, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for so much for debating and at one point agreeing here on OS, on the BBC World Service.